take a warehouse that's been converted into a jiu-jitsu gym. You take the lead guitarist for a 5-finger death punch. You get Eddie Bravo and then 2 guys named Keelan Lawyer and Brandon McGathrin. And you mix them all together, and what do you get? You get this thing called the PGF, the Professional Grappling Federation. Now, I used to train a lot in Decatur, Alabama. I would drive over every week and train with Brandon McGathrin. He was just a blue belt, and he was still teaching out of the old Bender's gym. In those days, if my memory serves me correctly, there was only 3 guys in the room besides the teacher. It was Brandon McGathrin, Keelan, Matt Scaff. Matt Scaff is Brandon's number 1 student, and then a guy that quit. I don't remember his name. Now, this was all like in 2012 or before. I got my blue belt in 2013, and I got it when we were at the old Bender's gym. Now, since that time, everybody in that room has a brown belt or a black belt, but me. Well, everybody in the room except the guy who quit and me. I'm super, super far behind the guys that are brown belt and black belts, and I'm way ahead of the dude who quit. I've actually been doing jiu-jitsu since the early 90s, but I just never did it with the frequency or intensity or the dedication that Matt and Brandon and Keelan had been doing it. Anyway, my only real fantasy in Brazilian jiu-jitsu was I wanted to invent a move and have it banned on the UFC. Now, I've invented a couple of chokes or modified a couple of chokes. I have a choke done out of a position called the stocks I call the Widener, and I've got a modification from a seat belt that I call the Lindsay choke, and I named it after Lindsay McGathrin, who kind of spurred me to invent this choke when I saw her do a rolling Kimura into a seat belt. But they've never gotten national popularity, and they definitely haven't been banned on the UFC. The closest I ever got to having a move that might be banned was Greg Barber used to use this move on his brother in Velvet Ridge, Arkansas, and he called it the dreaded nose to the eye. He would grab Jay by the ears and stick his nose in one of his eyes, and we finally made that the illegal move, and you'd get disqualified if you were wrestling in Velvet Ridge, Arkansas. It has never made its appearance in mixed martial arts. Anyway, rather than talking about my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, let's talk about what Brandon and Keelan have done with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The reason I'm talking about this is they've taken this idea of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and they've made a modification. They made an innovation to the sport. It started out a couple of years ago, and Brandon invited a bunch of guys to take part of a jiu-jitsu league, not a jiu-jitsu tournament, but to be in a jiu-jitsu league. Nobody's ever done this before. And so these guys all made a commitment, local guys within, maybe 2 hours, and they would come to Decatur, to the little gym over there, the 10th Planet Gym in Decatur, and they would wrestle 3 times every Friday for 8 or 10 weeks. And it was this thing that he called the Professional Grappling Federation, or the PGF, and they filmed it and they put it on YouTube. Well, the next year, instead of having everybody come back and forth, they asked everybody to come in and just stay for a week. And they would compete 3 times a night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then they would have a playoff, or they'd have a submission-only tournament to the top 8 guys that were in this league. Well, this has gone from that to now they go to different cities, Jacksonville, Florida, Nashville, Tennessee, Texas, LA, and they have qualifiers. And if you win the qualifier, you get a bid to be in the PGF. And if you don't win the qualifier, but you're an entertaining enough fighter, or you've got an interesting personality, or you've got a cool backstory, you get an invitation to be there too. And then they have this jiu-jitsu league. Well, this thing is blown up. They're now going to do a draft. So they've invited 4 highly respected coaches. These coaches are going to use PGF money and buy these players and build them a team. And so you'll have 4 teams competing. The top team that wins this competition is going to get, they're going to split $100,000 prize. And then if you're one of the top 8 guys, doesn't matter what team you're on, doesn't matter if your team wins or loses, if you're one of the top 8 guys, then you'll be in a submission-only tournament. It'll be run with some overtime rules like they do the Eddie Bravo Invitational or the EBI. And what they've done is they've taken a sport and they've innovated it. They've changed it. They're not changing anything about jiu-jitsu. They're just changing the way jiu-jitsu is delivered. In the PGF, it's not about referees. It's not about points. It's not about positional scoring. You see, if you've watched a traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament and you know anything about scoring, then you know there's certain positions that allow you to gain points. Like a mount gives you points, but a side mount does not. A back control gives you points. A knee on belly gives you points, and reversals and all kind of things. And a lot of times these guys will get out here and they'll game it. You'll watch a guy wrestle or you'll watch a guy grapple, and they use the point scoring system. The PGF doesn't use points. Well, they sort of use points. You get 3 points if you submit a guy with a joint lock, or in PGF parlance, if you get a break. And you get 6 points if you choke a guy or use a stranglehold. In PGF vocabulary, they call that a kill. If you get that done in the first minute of your match, then you get an extra point. And that is the absolute only way to win a PGF competition is to get a submission. And that's it. You have 6 minutes. These two guys come out on the mat, they tap and they shake hands and they start. And you got 6 minutes to get your job done. And you can't lose a PGF fight by judge's decision. You can't win a PGF fight by judge's decision. You can't blame a referee. You can't blame a bad call. You can't blame anything but yourself. See, what they've done with the PGF is they've taken the idea of this grappling sport and they've basically given you a 6-minute window to get your job done. And it's high intensity, high level grappling. And it basically makes all other jiu-jitsu competitions look like sloths wrestling in molasses. It's really, really entertaining to watch. Now, the PGF they've got the draft, they've got a fantasy league, and then at the end of all this, they've got a playoff series. They've done something with grappling that nobody else has ever even thought about doing. And Keelan's contribution to this is that he's a videographer. And he is introduced using a gimbal, which I guess is a steady cam type thing. So when these guys are wrestling and they're filming this, what they're doing is he can walk around the mat, or his camera people can walk around the mat, and they can film this from any angle, above the fighters, at the same mat level with the fighters. And it's not like you got 2 cameras pointed at the mat, and if they roll out of the shot, you lose the action. These guys get followed around, and it's mobile, and at the same time the camera angle is mobile. It's an absolute steady shot. This innovation to this sport is just absolutely tremendous. And this year, season 6 is going to be filmed in Vegas. You'll be able to watch part of it on UFC Fight Pass. So this little bitty local promotion in Decatur, Alabama has blown up, and it's got some really, really big names involved in it, and it's got some really, really big sponsorships involved in it. The thing that attracted me to it, the thing that got me really wrapped up about it, well, first of all, I just love Brandon, and I wanted to support anything that he was doing. But once I got involved with it, once I started looking at it, once I started watching it, the thing that is so pure about this is success is empirical. There's no ambiguous idea of success. You can't win if you don't win. You don't get any participation trophies. You simply win or you lose. It's not about style. It's not about somebody's bias about your style. It's not about somebody's prejudice. It's not about somebody's rank. There's no arbitrary measure for pseudo success. A black belt versus a white belt really means nothing if the white belt can get out there and get the job done. You win or you don't. If a white belt goes the distance with the black belt and ties him, yay, but a tie is not a win. If a black belt gets on the mat with a white belt and he lets himself not get submitted and he doesn't submit anybody in a 6-minute match, it penalizes you and it penalizes your team because you left points on the board that nobody could get. I'm not saying there's not an inherent benefit in the struggle. I'm not downplaying or minimizing the byproduct of what somebody gets from preparation. And I'm not saying there's no value in the growth for competing against the best of the best. But what I'm talking about in this particular league, in this particular instance, is what they've done with the PGF is they've sped up the competition and they have an objective, tangible, empirical way to measure success. And so many times, if you look at things and there's an arbitrary measure or an ambiguous measure of success, we walk away and we have a moral victory, or we feel good about ourselves because we made a good showing. And there's nothing wrong with being a good competitor. But let's just simply talk about success. So you say to yourself, I'm a good grappler. Well, that's wonderful. Did you win? Well, I felt like I had a good showing. Well, did you win? Well, this is really not my best rule. Did you win? My mom was proud of me. Did you win? Hey, my friends thought I was cool and popular, and my social media thing went viral. Did you win? There is an objective measure by which you can decide I won or I didn't win. I was successful or I wasn't successful. Now, I'm not really competitive by nature. I like a good match. I like a good hunt. I like a good game. I believe in the positive of giving one's best effort. And I'm really an adherent of the philosophy. I'm not necessarily here to be the best. I just want to do my best. But in this particular venue, in this particular competition, you take all that away. And in this, sometimes your best is just not enough. Wanting it real bad is just not enough. You see, the reason I'm talking about the PGF in these terms is I believe it is the antithesis of our soft society. We've got a soft society right now where we make excuses, we placate subpar effort, and everyone wants an NIL deal before they ever even take a snap. What I'm talking about is the rule set for the PGF, and it simply asks this question. I simply want to know, did you win? Or maybe change it. Were you successful? You see, the PGF defines success without ambiguity. In order to say I was successful, I simply have to go out and accomplish one goal, and I can accomplish that goal via two distinct paths. I get a tap with a joint lock, or I get a tap with a choke. Nothing else works. Nothing else wins. And therefore, very simply but elegantly put, nothing else matters. So if you take the PGF and you were to overlay that on your life, what's the rule set for your life? What is the non-debatable, not open for judgment, single focus of our existence? Can you come up with one strategy, one goal, one ending that when you get to the end of it, you simply answer the question, did you win? What did you step out onto the mat of life to accomplish? And will it have any value when you step off? You see, there is probably some value for competing well. There is probably some value for putting in the hard work. There's some value for stepping out of your comfort zone when you're a grappler. But I'm talking about the mat of life. What are you out here doing? What did you step out here to do? And when you do what you did when you step off the mat, is it going to matter? See, wrestling a black belt to a draw is impressive. I often feel really good about myself if I can roll with a higher belt and not get submitted. If I roll for a 3 to a 6 minute match with some of the guys at the 10th Planet Gym and I don't get murdered, I feel pretty good about myself. If I roll to a draw or a stalemate with Jerry King or Kevin Primo, I kind of celebrate that. But see, in the PGF, there's no moral victories. There's just simply victory. It feels good. Maybe it even looks good. But after you leave the mat, if it's not a win, it's not actually success. I think we need to have my son-in-law coaches basketball, and he gives this speech about that they're a private Christian school, but they have a blue-collar work ethic, and he has this hard hat that he keeps on the bench with him to remind them of what their work ethic is. Well, I think we need to have a PGF rule set in our lives. See, there's all sorts of measures that we like to use and other people tell us to use. And some of those things are very, very tempting. And, in order to live my life with purpose, to live my life intentional, to seek to be my best, I've got to change the rule set and redo the format. I can't use the rule set you like. I can't use the rule set that's easy. I can't use the rule set that fits your style. See, I have to quit judging success by position. I have to quit judging success by what I acquired, points, money, or stuff. I have to have an achievable, measurable goal. You see, you can't keep score with money. Well, if you do, then when you leave the mat, it doesn't matter. You can't keep score with stuff, and if you do, then when you leave this mat, it doesn't matter, because he who dies with the most toys still dies. You can't keep score with fame or notoriety. You see, a win, a success, has to have some permanence. A win can't be temporary. You see, the champion this year may or may not be the champion next year, and even Elijah Carlton hadn't won every season. See, I'm talking about a success. I'm talking about a victory. I'm talking about a measure that transcends seasons. And it's not measured by some kind of arbitrary, superficial, ambiguous, materialistic metric. It's not measured by a false sense of value or even a good feeling. The question, when you've left the mat, you've come here and you've stayed on the mat as long as you're allowed to stay on the mat. The question after you leave the mat, after you've competed for your soul, your marriage, the souls of the people you love, the souls of your children, and the kinds of things that are valuable beyond trophies, belts, and rings. When we finish that struggle, the only question that will matter at the end, and it won't be decided by committee, it won't be decided by judges, it won't be decided by feeling, it won't be decided by popular vote, how we feel or how others felt about us. The only question that will matter at the end of our season, and you only get one season, the question is not about who liked us, not what we collected, not what we amassed, not what did we achieve or acquire. But the question is, after we leave the mat, did we simply do what we stepped out there to do? Not were you fulfilled, but did you fulfill your purpose? The PGF makes you ask one question. Did you win?